Welcome back to Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and it's another episode of me complaining about movie stuff. So I know that this is technically Comics with Drew, but it's also my channel, so I will talk about geek related things if I feel it is important to do so. The news just cleared. They came across the Twitters that Henry Cavill, I'm pretty sure you pronounce his name Cavill. Henry Cavill. I've always done that. I've heard it Cavill, but anyway, Henry is not going to be coming back as Superman, ostensibly, in the James Gunn version of the DC Cinematic Universe. Now, I was looking, I was looking through the Twitter reactions, and I know that I've talked about the Zack Snyder fans before and how they seem to be really dedicated fans, and you may be one of those fans. And if you are, I'm happy for you that you are a big fan of the Zack Snyder universe. I'm not personally a big fan of it. I think that there are issues with the tone, the visual tone, the story tone of the characters that I don't think quite line up properly for the DCU. So that's my personal opinion. So you may disagree with that, and that's perfectly fine. We're all fans of DC in our own ways. That being said, when I heard that they were bringing James Gunn back to, well, not just be another director like Suicide Squad, but actually to run the entire universe, I had cautiously optimistic feelings about that. And the reason why is because James Gunn does have a James Gunn thing that he does. Like, all of his films are pretty James Gunny. There is no question about that. However, he does at least know how to construct a story properly, at least in my opinion. His movies, I think, have a definitive idea of what they're attempting to do, and I think that he has a good handle on character development. So with that being said, I know a lot of people in October were very happy to see Henry coming back as Superman. He announced, kind of not officially from my perspective, but that he was talking with the studio about coming back to the DCU, which could mean he's Superman, could mean he's something else, but everybody assumed that he would be Superman because, let's be real, since Christopher Reeve, he's the only character, or he's the only actor to really play the role really well as Superman, in my opinion. People were happy with Henry coming back, and honestly, I've never had a problem with him as Superman. I thought he was a great Superman. I think that he was not served well by the story or the direction of Man of Steel. And I think that, throughout the Justice League and all these movies where he was doing cameos, he was good. He was doing a good Superman, but I don't think that there was anything really. I think there wasn't anything that was good enough material for Superman. So I was happy about him coming back, but at the same time, I was just cautiously optimistic about James Gunn. So it comes out today that he met with James Gunn, and basically they said that they were going in a direction where they were doing a younger story, or they were doing a story with a younger Superman. Now, Cavill is not a young dude. I mean, he's like, middle-aged Superman, right? Looks fantastic, but he's not like a young guy. And so if they need a young guy to be Superman, and apparently it's not an origin story, according to Gunn's reply to somebody's tweet, it's going to be a little bit different, right? So, but apparently Gunn says that, they want Henry in the DCU, just not necessarily as his standard Superman character. So, I don't know. But the reason I'm doing this video is I saw this tweet, right? And I'm going to put up on the screen here. This tweet basically is this person saying that, James Gunn isn't giving in to the fans' demands for what the DC Cinematic Universe should be. And chief among those demands, according to this particular individual, is that Henry Cavill is Superman. And, as someone who is a fan of a lot of different IPs, a lot of different intellectual properties, whether it's science fiction or action, whatever, I believe that fan input is important. So I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you have a direct sequel to earlier films, like it's a direct sequel and you're featuring the same characters, I think you really should take into account what fans like about the original films and respect that, right? You should always respect the intellectual property, regardless of what it is, whether you're doing a reboot or you're doing a sequel. But much more so when you're doing a direct sequel, you really need to try to keep it, on a consistent level. So you're not changing up the characters' motivations. You're respecting the characters where they are in the arc, where they've come, and which direction they're going, and you want to make sure that you get things that the fans enjoy, right? I mean, a classic example is you watch Back to the Future, right? Back to the Future 2 is a lot of the same beats that you see in Back to the Future, right? Back to the Future is a phenomenal success, one of the greatest movies ever made, one of the best screenplays ever written. And the idea is that, through Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3, you have these setups and payoffs that are kind of like a rhythm, It's kind of like a song. You don't change up the beat in a song 3 or 4 times to go randomly, radically different ways. You might, just do a key change, but you got the same kind of tone with the melody or the instruments that you're playing. So that's how you do a successful, sequel to a prior film. So that being said, when you're doing a reboot, right, and that's what this really is this DC Cinematic Universe by James Gunn is essentially a wipe the slate clean reboot, start from scratch. And there's not really a way to continue the current situation without, multiverse random chuckle effery. So it's difficult to say, okay, we're going to take all this stuff and we're going to take the Snyderverse and we're going to roll that into my new vision. That's something that's incredibly difficult and, quite frankly, I believe personally untenable. And so what I think people should be looking at here is they should be looking at the DC Cinematic Universe kind of like Bond, right? Whenever there's a new actor, an actor is out of contract, or they decide that they're going to go in a different direction, or he's just done enough movies and he's had it with it, they basically reinvent Bond, right? And people get angry all the time. People get angry about castings and stuff like that, and they flip out. And I think the reason why they do is because they know what they love, and they love what they've seen, and they're really very close to it, and and they've got very strong opinions about that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact of the matter, though, is that if you're going to continue telling similar stories, people age out of roles, and basically you're going to have things change. It's just the nature of life. So right now, I'm not saying that Gunn is right to not bring Cavill back. I don't know. I honestly don't know, and neither do you out there. I mean, you can be fans of Henry as Superman, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you can want him to come back, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to sit there and say that you're done with the DC Cinematic Universe, well, I hate to break it to you, Warner Brothers is done with the DC Cinematic Universe. Everybody is done with the DC Cinematic Universe, and the fact that it does not make enough money as it stands. It's just not cutting it. A Superman movie done properly should make $1 billion. Period. A Wonder Woman movie done properly should make $1 billion. A really successful Batman film and a really successful Superman film, these films should be clearing $1 billion, in my personal opinion, because the characters are universal. They're just cultural icons and cultural touchstones, and they're things that people resonate with. So these movies cost too much money to produce to not recoup those costs and allow the studio to make other movies that aren't necessarily big blockbuster tentpole things. And that is important, especially for the art form. So that all being said, I think that what I wanted to talk about basically is the fact that there are these hypercritical, super vocal fans that I think don't have a firm idea as to what's good for the character, right? And again, this is not to say that you should reinvent characters. And I want to say that, I've got some cautious optimism about James Gunn. I don't have faith in people like this. I don't have faith in actors or faith in directors or faith in writers. It's whatever you've done for me lately that has been successful. And if you've got a good track record, then that again makes me just cautiously optimistic. And that's where I am with Gunn, right? I don't think Gunn's done anything that is worthy of people being very angry about. Okay? I just don't. And I know that he does respect these characters. From what he's been able to show in the past, his past actions seem to indicate that he does actually know what he's doing. So, I know a lot of people are upset about the Cavill thing, but you got to realize that this is a new thing, and it's going to have to be a new thing, and don't hate it before you even know what's going on with it. All right. So again, I don't want you coming at me with this, oh, you're just a simp for Disney or Warner Brothers or the woke people or whatever. No, it has nothing to do with that. I take each film on its own merits as it comes along, right? Okay. I've not seen most of the Phase 4 Marvel stuff. So I've seen several of the films, and I'm a big fan of the Spider-Man No Way Home movie. I'm a huge fan of that film. But I'm not going to sit there and say because X person believes differently than me or X person has different, you know, political orientation than me or whatever, I'm not going to sit there and dismiss out of hand anything that they make, right? And so I just don't buy into that mentality. I think that that's a dangerous and basically, and frankly, I believe that hurts you as a consumer of these stories and of these characters and fans of these characters. I believe it does you a disservice to dismiss out of hand something just because you don't like what someone has said or how someone acts on social media. They may act like jerks, okay? They just might, but that doesn't mean that necessarily what they're doing with their movies or what they're doing with these characters that you like is going to necessarily be bad. So I'm not losing my mind about Henry Cavill not coming back as Superman, right? It's my hope that James Gunn knows what he's doing, right? And I hope that the very next Superman movie that comes out is the best Superman movie ever made. I really do. And until I see any kind of indication that that's not the case, I'm going to reserve judgment. And I think that fans that, and I count myself a fan, need to kind of take a deep breath and a step back on this, right? And let Gunn have a minute to figure out what he's going to do and let him roll with what he's trying to do. David Zaslav has already canned Batgirl, right? He's already canceled a bunch of different things that were bad, demonstrably, objectively bad ideas. And so if he has decided that Gunn is the right guy to do it, and he wants the studio to get away from social justice, social political commentary, then I think that that's a good thing. I mean, I think that we have the ingredients here for a potential amazing run of films. So one of the big problems, in my opinion, with the Snyderverse is that there is a lot of incoherence from film to film to film on what was going on, what the stories were, and this is a major problem, right? And you can like the actors that they've cast for these films as much as you want, but the reality is that it wasn't cohesive. And when you can look over at the MCU and its money printing machine for billions and billions of dollars because the phase 1, 2, and 3 was really well put together and really well executed, you want to have something that's at least that consistent, right? Whatever you don't like about the MCU, you cannot argue that through phase 3 the movies were pretty much consistent in what they were attempting to do. So even if you were watching a movie that wasn't as great, like you're watching Iron Man 3 or Thor the Dark World, or even Incredible Hulk, these films, or even Captain Marvel, bless her heart, even though you're watching these movies and maybe some of them were uneven in quality, they still had a consistent vision that they were executing. And that's the most important thing. And if they can just manage to do that and make these movies good movies, they don't even have to be world-breaking, amazing movies, but if they just make them good movies, it will go a long way to restoring, the greatest superheroes that exist. I guess the whole point of what I'm trying to say here is to breathe, take a step back. I understand where a lot of you all are coming from on this, and I would encourage you, or I would exhort you to not take a reactionary attitude to it. So, mean, you know the stories. Michael Keaton got cast as Batman. Everybody lost their minds. Heath Ledger got cast as the Joker. Everybody lost their minds. But these turned out to be fantastic casting choices for what these directors were trying to do. And so James Gunn has not put out a bad film. Okay? I mean, he's put out maybe some films that weren't the best, but he has not put out a bad film. And I think he's got a real good handle on superhero and comic book stuff. So that's what I have to say about it. So I know I haven't been doing videos. I've got a lot going on, as you know, typically it is with real life. But I have read, I've read all of these Spider-Man books. I've read this one, 11, 13, and 12. And, you know, to give you a brief synopsis, these three books, they're all right. They're not the best, okay? There's a lot of hobgoblin, rodeo stuff going on, and they're not the worst. John Romita Jr. has continued. I'll just put it that way. But I will tell you this, right? And I'm going to review all these books. I promise you. In fact, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. Over the next couple weeks, I'm going to start doing my Spider-Man hate videos, for lack of a better term. But this, the Amazing Spider-Man 14. This is hot trash. So this comic actually actively angered me. So I mean, if you've read it, you may know what I'm talking about. But if you're going to do a multi-artist, multi-writer kind of thing, actually, I don't think it's multi-artist. It's just It's not multi-writer. It's just multi-artist. That's not how you do it. So anyway, we'll get into that. So, but again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble. In closing, again, Henry Cavill is not back at DC as Superman. He's back at DC as possibly something else. And it's hard to necessarily gauge the state of the situation definitively as for what it means for the DC Cinematic Universe. But James Gunn has basically given big news that he's got a new Superman that he's writing right now, and that it's going to feature a younger Superman, and Henry's going to have a role in this somewhere, but he's not going to be that Superman. So we'll see what goes on. But again, thanks for watching Comics with Drew. I'm Drew, and I'll catch you later.